Reports of the Vikings talking to Ryan Tannehill to be their backup. Is that even a good idea? Welcome to the Locked On Vikings podcast.
You are Locked On Vikings, your daily Minnesota Vikings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Locked On Vikings podcast, where we're always trying to learn something new. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And thank you so much for making Locked On Vikings your first listen of the day every single day. I appreciate my hashtag everydayers so very much. You all make this thing go round. Today's episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off of your first year. Today on the show, we're going to rattle through a weird rabbit hole of my thought processes. You're going to get a sense of how my brain tangents from one thing to another. So I wanted to start with Ryan Tannehill and an update on what's going on. There was a report from Jordan Schultz. The Vikings have had discussions. What's the deal there? What's his situation? So I want to kind of give you a little, recent history of Ryan Tannehill. And then that kind of spun me into the way that people talk about the Vikings. And the way that the objective measures we have for the way that people think about the Vikings, namely like betting odds, I think is an objective measure for what the public thinks about the Minnesota Vikings and what that means about their present and their future. So first things first, the report that everybody's talking about comes from Jordan Schultz, and it just says that Ryan Tannehill and the Vikings have had some talks. It doesn't say that any contract is imminent. It doesn't say that there's a visit even going on. It doesn't say that there's, any offers being exchanged. They've talked a little. Pretty early stages stuff, pretty kind of soft reporting. Appreciated, but not something you can take to the bank. But Ryan Tannehill as an idea is a popular one that I think gets pretty positive reception from most people, at least most people that respond to like me when I do content, have been pretty like open to that idea. And I get it. I agree. I think it makes plenty of sense, assuming that the situation is what we would assume it is, which is he comes in to be a veteran mentor, right? The old guy bringing along the rookie, doesn't cost a comp pick. That's really important because he sat out all of last year. He does not count toward the compensatory formula, which means where the Vikings are at right now, they're actually getting 2. So you could preserve that. That's a pretty good reason, right? And, compare him to like Joe Flacco, who kind of has the same vibe. Maybe you like Tannehill better than Flacco, or maybe you like him about the same, like whatever. He's one of those guys. And surely more exciting to you than like Sam Ehlinger or like Carson Wentz. Well, I shouldn't say surely. I don't know what your quarterback opinions are. They're between you and your bedroom. Oh no. The point being, I think it's a perfectly sensible idea, but there is the possible wrinkle that Ryan Tannehill doesn't want to be a mentor to a young rookie quarterback or second-year quarterback, if you will. This comes from, I think, an extrapolation of a quote that he had right around last year training camp. I think actually in the middle of training camp last year. He went on Scoop City, Diana Rossini's podcast with Chase Daniel. I know she's in a little bit of trouble with Vikings fans right now. Okay, try to look past that. They asked Ryan Tannehill, what are you looking, what's going on? Are you going to come back? Are you retired? What's the deal? And he said, I'm waiting for the right opportunity. What's going on? Are you going to come back? Are you going to retire? What's the deal? And he said, I'm waiting for the right opportunity. And on that show, I'll link it in the show notes. Please yell at me if I forget, if it's not in the description. Because I think you should listen to it for yourself. If we're going to start psychoanalyzing quotes from people, especially when it gets into, camp season and expectations for the season and how do you feel about your contract and stuff like that, you got to listen to it because just reading excerpts is always going to be an incomplete picture. So please go listen to it. If I didn't link it, please yell at me and I'll add it. So Chase Daniel kind of pressed him and was like, okay, are you willing to be a backup quarterback somewhere? And he kind of didn't answer and more so said, I'm just waiting for the right situation. And I don't really know what to make of that answer. I don't know if you don't answer because you just don't, because you don't want to be a backup, if you don't answer because you're just not that enthused about the idea, but you still kind of want to keep the door open. So, you're going to not say anything super committal. Again, like, tea leaves it however you want, but the vibe that I got, and then he later even kind of said this, like, maybe I just sit around until someone's quarterback gets hurt, then they call me. And the vibe that I got is that was his plan for getting back on the field. Ryan Tannehill will be 37 when training camp starts. He doesn't need this. He's at a 12-year NFL career. He needs nothing from anyone. So I think for him to still enjoy being part of the NFL, that's like his plan, or at least it was last year. To give you a quick rundown on where Ryan Tannehill was before all this, he also had a quote on the eve of the 2023 season when the Titans had just drafted Will Levis. And they said, hey, are you going to bring the kid along? And he said, my job is not to be a mentor. That's another big one. People really extrapolate. My job is not to be a mentor. My job is to win football games. I am the starting quarterback. I'm going to be the starting quarterback. I'm not Master Splinter trying to bring the Ninja Turtles up. I'm here to win football games. And that sort of aged really bad as Ryan Tannehill got hurt that year. Will Levis took the job, didn't give it up, and Malik Willis got it. Then they kind of did the QB carousel thing down the end of the year. And then he didn't get brought back, and that was kind of it. So you've got this narrative of this quarterback that doesn't want to do the humble role. He doesn't want to be the backup. He doesn't want to be the mentor to the real stud of the team. He wants to be the guy. And if that means not playing, he's at peace with that. If nobody wants him to be that, and that means his career is over, so be it. He's going to go spearfishing in the Bahamas. Seems fine to me, dude. Like, you do you. So that's, I guess, where he is at. But here's what I'll say. You sit on the couch for a year. You watch a season from a distance after 12 years of being in the thick of it, and you watch everything from a distance. You watch a team win the Super Bowl. You watch teams experience triumphs and heartbreaks together. I wonder if you don't miss it a little. Like, I wonder if there is a yearning to go back. I don't think he can reasonably expect anyone to anoint him with a starting job after being out of the league for a year. Maybe not even a backup job after being out of the league for a year. When you're out of the league for a year, all expectations for you go completely out the window. There is nothing like football shape, no matter how hard you work in the weight room and on the track. And out in your backyard throwing and staying in shape, you will never be in the same kind of shape that you will be in a football practice. You don't have to take my word for it. Tons and tons and tons of players have attested to that. They always say it at the eve of training camp going, well, it's different here. So it's different. And being away from that for a year, all bets are off as to what kind of quality of play you can expect from Ryan Tannehill. So there is a part of me that kind of goes, is this so good an idea? Is it really worth it just for like some 4th round pick next year to like have this backup that is, I'm like, are we Sean Hilling this? And if our guy goes down, we're just like right back in the exact same situation the Vikings were in 2016 when Teddy went down. Like, are we sure we're okay with this? And I pause because I can't watch 2023 Ryan Tannehill tape and be like, this is what you're getting. You can't rely on that. As much as I still understand the idea, and I'm certainly not going to complain about it if it does end up happening, I've got these little reservations on if this is the situation we think it is, and if it's even, if he does end up taking the field, holy crap, what are we going to get? Or maybe Joe Flacco's this, right? Like maybe he's like old man hoops, and now he doesn't care anymore, and it takes all the pressure off, and he has the season of his life. Wouldn't be the first Vikings quarterback to come in after a year off and have the season of his life, and he wouldn't be the first Vikings quarterback to have the season of his life under Kevin O'Connell and not be able to replicate it anywhere else. There are reasons to have that, but all of that is ifs and thens and hypotheticals and what ifs, right? Here's what if you may allow me a spicy prediction. I don't know if Ryan Tannehill actually signs with the Vikings. Considering the way that he's talked about his, kind of late stage career and what he wants from it, I don't know if he wants to take a backup role. I mean, look, you could offer him 5 million reasons to take a backup role, and that can be, 10 or however many, and that can be tempting. But after a long career, he's made a lot of money. That doesn't seem to be that much of a motivating factor for him. What if it is just a Rolodex thing? What if the Vikings have met with Ryan Tannehill and said, stay by your phone? Look, if you get a starting job somewhere, you get a starting job somewhere. You shirk us, we get it. It's a business. But stay by your phone. We got a quarterback. He's going to be our guy. You're not going to compete with him. But he's also coming off of knee rehab, right? He rehabbed a meniscus surgery. He's just getting done with it right about now. Something goes wrong with that, we'll give you a call. We won't do it before. We'll do it at the time. But if something goes wrong with that, we'll give you a call. That is my spicy prediction, that if J.J. McCarthy does get hurt, or, forget the surgery, right? Like, any quarterback can twist his leg wrong and it can go down. In the event that that happens, you got a phone number on speed dial, but you're not spending money ahead of time preemptively to bring him in. And what that does is it allows you to be a little bit less serious about, the backup option of what happens if J.J. McCarthy gets hurt. If the answer to that question is Ryan Tannehill's on the couch, we'll pull him in, it'll be fine, then you can look at quarterbacks in the draft. You can have a couple young quarterbacks in the room. And, it's a little scary, but not so scary because you can bring him in a veteran if it comes to that. So you start to think about who's going to be around in the 5th round, right? What if Quinn Ewers is here? What if that I can never remember his name, the Louisville quarterback? What if he's there? And maybe, that's an interesting idea. And he can maybe be developed to be a backup, right? All that is very far down this line of thought, and it's a spicy prediction, My jaw's not going to hit the floor if I see tomorrow, oh, look, Ryan Tannehill signed. It's fine. But people go really insane about the Vikings. I don't know. I feel like maybe I'm just super overexposed to the craziest things people say because I'm tuned to find it. But people really, really don't think the Vikings are going to be good this year. I think that's kind of crazy, and we got to talk about it. That'll be next on the Locked On Vikings podcast. Today's Locked On Vikings episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Monarch Money is more than just a budgeting app. It is a wealth manager. So if you're the kind of person who suddenly looks up your bank account and goes, oh no, maybe you should be a little bit more aware of what's going on. That is what Monarch Money is for. You're trying not to lose track of your money, but you still want to be able to live life, right? Dine out every once in a while, go to a movie every once in a while, do stuff that's fun, vacations, whatever it is your lifestyle can afford. And Monarch Money can give you a lot of that, right? They can give you insights on how much you spend on, say, food delivery, how much you're spending on shopping, how much you're spending, or maybe you're not even spending as much as you thought on travel, and maybe you can up it and have more fun, right? And do so comfortably. But they also help you build wealth and even collaborate with a partner. If you have a joint account or something like that, they make for easy collaboration and tracking everything to make sure everybody's on the same page. That's, of course, very important. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off of your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNFL for half off of your first year. Today's episode is also brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. I don't want to talk to you about my bracket. March Madness is here, and it's over for some of us. It's going bad. I had Iowa State in the Final Four. Don't talk to me, okay? Just don't talk to me. But that's what FanDuel is for. If you still want to have a little bit of fun and your bracket's a total mess, you forget about that and just put down a couple money line parlays or something like that. Have fun with whatever you want to do. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. That's $200 extra to use on everything from buzzer beaters to Cinderella stories, and all you have to do to get it is win one $5 bet. Look, the women's bracket is still laden with overwhelming favorites. You can put down a money line, and it'll give you an excuse to watch Paige Beckers. And put that $5 down, you get $200 in bonus bets, no matter how short the odds are there. So visit FanDuel.com and get in on the college hoops action all tournament long. Moving right along here on the Locked On Vikings podcast. Thank you so much for making Locked On Vikings your first listen of the day. When you're done here, if you're craving some film analysis, I'm talking about reports and I'm going to go into the cap stuff. If you just need some football, go to patreon.com/LukeBrownNFL. I have breakdowns on Will Fries, Ryan Kelly, and Jordan Mason up there on that website. So it's less than $4 a month if you want, and you can get access to everything I put up there. Or you can wait till after the draft and you can just watch all the free agents after that. But if you don't want to wait, go ahead and join. I would very much appreciate it. Okay, so The Vikings are currently by betting odds at FanDuel, the third worst team in the NFC. That is how they are projected. Just let that sink in, right? Like, think about how you feel about the Vikings. And, JJ McCarthy is an unknown, but one we're excited about, I would hope. Unless you just really hated him coming out of college, which I'll get to you all. But the Vikings improved on the interior on both sides of the line. Very much was like the thing that people were most upset about, seemed to be the singular reason they lost games the most, was not being able to get pressure up the interior, not being able to stop pressure up the interior. And they threw a ton of money at that problem. All of the principal pass catchers are returning. Skill players are all returning. Hockenson, Jefferson, Addison, Aaron Jones. They're all healthy now. You might lose a few games of Jordan Addison right at the top of the season if he gets his suspension, but that's going to be like 3, like not like half the season like it was with Hockenson. Christian Darrisaw was hurt for half of last year. Hopefully you'll get him for most of the season. There are so many reasons to look up at the Vikings projections. Now, winning 14 games is hard to do in a row. Even if you get better, you might not win more games. That's just how the league works. So, like, I don't expect their over-under, their win total to be 13.5 teams. Nobody's will be 13.5 wins. The highest it gets is like 11.5 or 12.5. And that's for like the Chiefs and Bills and the teams that always win that much. But the betting market thinks the Vikings will be bad. Like, that's different. And I found myself kind of surprised by this. And I feel okay, like, kind of taking a jab here, because the Vikings were plus 1,000 to win the division last year. They came within a game of it. Their over-under was 6.5 games. They doubled it. They won 14. And now they're plus 550. So the market has acknowledged a pretty strong improvement of the vibes. They have. They just were so low on them last year. That was truly wrong. I was right there with them. I was wrong with them. So, I get it. But right now the Vikings are projected to be the worst team in the NFC North. I think that's insane. The Bears just happened. Like, we just saw that season. And we saw the season the Vikings had. And I think it's really difficult to make an argument that, like, the teams haven't at least gone kind of step for step with each other in the offseason. The Bears have improved some key things. The Vikings have improved some key things. They're looking at the draft. The difference is everybody, like the general public, which is influencing all these Vegas odds, is still really, really high on Caleb Williams and really, really low on JJ McCarthy. Look, I kind of get it that JJ McCarthy is an unknown. He's a rookie quarterback. You never know what to do, and so you don't want to bet on it, so the betting odds are going to fall away. And I think that is the lion's share of what is going on here. That it's not that people are looking at the Vikings and saying, that's a 4-win team. No, I think it's going, we don't know what that is. I don't want to bet on it. And I wouldn't be surprised to see the Vikings come out with a win total at FanDuel of like 8.5 games. Because just nobody knows what to do. That's what you do with a team you don't know what to do with. They put the line at 8.5 and nobody bets it, so it stays there. I wouldn't be surprised at all. But I do think that there is like a hypocrisy of the public, which isn't any individual person's hypocrisy, but rather the voices that get loud are always the negative ones, which is annoying to me. And I don't know what to do about that. But like, okay, so last year, the Vikings had whatever odds they had. They had their win total was like 7.5 for a while. It was, they had their odds to win the division. It was not good, but it wasn't like, horrible. And then JJ McCarthy gets hurt in the preseason and everything plummets. Everybody starts hammering their under, their division odds have to go way up to get anybody to do it. So it to me, that reads as, everybody thought JJ McCarthy would be an important part of the Vikings. He got hurt. Now an important part of the Vikings gone, and that hurts them. That seems like reasonable enough logic to me for the public to kind of be saying at large. But last week, when Tom Pelissero and then subsequently like every national reporter came out with a report that the Vikings were moving on from the idea of Aaron Rodgers. They thought about it, decided against it, and they're moving on to other options, and that they've also parried away trade calls for JJ McCarthy. And really are committing to JJ McCarthy. The odds plummeted again. It all went, everybody thinks that was bad for the Vikings again. So is JJ good for the Vikings or bad for the Vikings? It seems like no matter what the Vikings do, it's bad for the Vikings. And I don't think that that's very fair to the Vikings. It's negativity bias. It's just like, a studied and known phenomenon in human psychology. But I get to be a little bit annoyed by that. I think you just have to decide. Do you think J.J. McCarthy starting is a good thing or a bad thing? And I think with J.J. McCarthy, like the negativity bias follows him from college. He played for the villains of college football, which was Michigan. They had the Connor Stallion thing. They were embroiled in scandal, and then they won the national championship. It is not unlike the 2014 Patriots winning the Super Bowl while Deflategate is being litigated. Everyone's annoyed about hearing about it. Everyone's annoyed that they kind of feel like they got away with it, and then they're winning the Super Bowl anyways. It's like, what? Like, F this, right? Everybody's just mad. I think people who hate analytics and who don't want, like, the nerd GM want Kwesi to fail. They want to look at every move that Kwesi makes and say, well, that's stupid. Well, that's stupid. Well, that's stupid. Even if it means that they find themselves saying, well, they were really, you shouldn't draft a safety. And then also saying, well, that's really stupid. They need to spend more. They should have drafted a safety. Like, even if you say things that are diametrically opposed to each other, as long as it makes Kwesi look bad and serves your greater prior about him, that means you weren't wrong, right? And it's a self-defense thing. And I think a lot of that follows J.J. McCarthy around. Of course, you know the narrative, oh, he never passed. He handed it off all the time. It wasn't his team or all that stuff. I think is really bunk, and I did a lot of work to try to debunk it. When he came out last year, you can watch a couple of Patreon videos. You can read a couple of really big articles that I wrote about him, including pre-draft and post-draft stuff, so I'm not just being a homer about it. But either way, there's a lot of negativity. There are people who have grudges against Vikings fans because of interactions that they've had. I mean, people in national media. I'm not just talking about like Twitter accounts getting into Twitter beef here. I'm talking about people who go on TV that just spent their whole day arguing with Vikings fans about Kirk Cousins. You know, like really staunch Kirk Cousins defenders that really would get up in anybody's face who said anything bad about him. Or people who fought about regression in 2022. And then those people will go on TV and say something about the Vikings. It's like they're angry about it. And I don't know. Social media has had that effect on me, and it has really caused me to reevaluate my relationship to it over the last like 3-4 months, and I think improve my life. I don't know, but all that is to say, there are as many reasons to think the Vikings will fail as there are for any team. Right? You never know. It's the NFL. The wrong guy gets hurt. You know, the quarterback, you know, the rookie quarterback doesn't work. Okay, everybody who's ever had a rookie quarterback deals with that exact uncertainty. But it feels like people are really, really, really champing at the bit to wait for the first interception and then point at their screen like Leo in whatever that movie was. Like that GIF we've all seen. Like, it feels like we're all just like ready. And it's going to get really fun next year when the Vikings are over the salary cap and they have to start restructuring contracts again. Oh boy, are you going to hear some really dumb stuff about that. So let me get out ahead of it. That'll be next on Locked On Vikings. Before we start talking cap stuff here on the Locked On Vikings podcast, everybody say it with me, okay? I don't care if you're in your car. I don't care if you're in your living room. I don't care if you're around people on the subway. I need you to say it out loud with me. Cap go up. Cap go up. That's the answer to all of your woes. Cap go up. So, should we panic about the caps? No, because cap go up. So, Matt Freese came on the show last Friday and made me aware, because I hadn't been tracking this, of the fact that the Vikings are over the cap for 2026. Last week, he published a kind of a companion article showing his work on that. I'll link that in the show notes as well. Please yell at me if I forget these. So I'm not going to just like rehash what he told me on that podcast. All that information and much more detail is in the article at Zone Coverage. But rather, how do we fix it? Right? What is the next step the Vikings do? And here's the thing. The Vikings didn't accidentally get themselves into a situation like this, right? This is not something you wake up and you find, oh my God, we way overspent for 2026. They know what they know exactly what they are doing. And They know exactly what their plan is to resolve that problem. The issue is one of marketing, where now they're going to be projected to be over the cap. So there's going to be a big scary number on the websites on Over the Cap and Spot Track that says they're over, that they're going to have to do something about. But let me give you a sense of just how little work it's going to take to fix that problem, get ready for their free agency, and why 2026 is actually a really good year to load it all into. It has nothing to do with like what they think of JJ McCarthy. People try to do that and be like, oh, well, they're going to be screwed next year, so they're going all in for 1 year, and then that means they're actually going to trade for Justin Herbert, or like whatever like weird crackpot stuff is going out. Like, I don't know who started the Justin Herbert thing, but I hope you weren't trying to be serious. And everybody who takes that take seriously, I have a watch I would love to sell you. It's definitely a Rolex. Okay, so the way they're going to get out of this, and this is something that Matt goes over in his zone coverage article, is that almost all of their cap commitments for 2026 are in normal base salary. Some of it's guaranteed, but it's all base salary. Base salary is the easiest money to move around, right? Now, if you have a lot of commitments in prorated bonus, or in uncuttable salary, or, uncuttable contracts or whatever, then you're in a big crunch. This is where the Saints have been for a couple years. This is where the Eagles have found themselves for a couple of years. But if anybody, if there is ever an example to maybe make you a little bit less scared here, it's the Eagles who are sitting there on their Lombardi trophies going, yeah, let's put another void year on it. But that's the problem. If you have too much in bonuses in a given year, that money is not movable. So you just have to like go around other stuff. And that's when you have to start cutting players, doing other stuff. The Vikings can restructure anything. They can also extend players if they want to. Someone like Brian O'Neill, who is going to be due an extension in 2026. He'll be going into a contract here for 2026. I would very much expect an extension there. And then, players who are just in a big money year of a longer deal. Hawkinson, Justin Jefferson, Christian Darrisaw, Byron Murphy's deal gets a little bit bigger, the one he just signed. All restructurable. So right now, Over the Cap has the Vikings $9 million over for the 2026 season. That is probably an underestimation. There's some other figures, I think, and incentives and stuff that they make certain assumptions about the way that their like process goes that might not actually turn out that way. It doesn't matter. They're over the cap, right, for 2026. If they don't hand Brian O'Neill another dime, just void years and restructures, which is really important. They are not spending any additional cash to do this, because when you spend additional cash to do it, that cash, whether it's bonus or whatever, has to be paid out on some year's salary cap. We're not doing any of that. We're just taking the commitments we've already made and moving the money around. You could save 14 mil of Brian O'Neill's deal, max. 14.1 mil max, just by adding void years to the deal and restructuring the contract. And I'm going to assume that they would actually extend it, but you could probably do something similar with one of those extensions that, pushes money back. If you want to just restructure Jonathan Grenard's contract, you can save almost 13 mil. You want to restructure TJ Hawkinson's contract, you can save 9.5. Justin Jefferson's, you can save 18 mil, appropriate. Christian Darrisaw's, you can save 9 mil. Byron Murphy's, you can save 11 mil. Harrison Phillips, who could potentially be a cut candidate if the Vikings draft a defensive tackle, cutting him would save 7.5 mil. You do all of those things, you are suddenly looking at $75 million in cap space for 2026. To me, doing all of those things would be ridiculous overkill, right? You'd be pushing so much money into future years that you don't really need to do. You don't need $75 million of cap space in a given year. That's like, what, like a quarter of the cap for that year? More than that, more than a quarter of the cap for that year. Like, that's insane. You don't need that much money in a given year. And the reason you don't need that much money in that year is because the Vikings departing unrestricted free agents are really, really light. This year, they lost a ton of players. Some of that was, Cam Robinson, 1-year deal types that, were temporary starters and stuff. Or Sam Darnold, who like people whose actual replacement is already in the building. right? Like we didn't need to go into free agency and replace Cam Robinson. We had Christian Darrisaw. We just needed like Justin School. It didn't matter. But next year, the departing free agents are guys they signed to 1-year deals, like Jeff Okudah or Tavier Thomas or whatever, and Ivan Pace, CJ Ham, Jalen Naylor, and then like 1-year deals and future deals. Those are the guys you have to replace or extend or figure out what you're doing about them, right? It's a really good year if those are your only problems, right? Wide receiver 3, one off-ball linebacker, and a fullback. Those are all very cheap things. Really good year to have a cap crunch. So if the Vikings wanted to, they could restructure a couple of those deals, not all 7 of the things that I said, but pick whichever ones you want, right? Pick a couple, the ones that, you feel you're least likely to want to try to move on from that contract, right? Pick like Justin Jefferson and Darrisaw. There you go. Boom. Everything else stays flexible. Do just enough so that you can address whatever needs that are created, right? And then you still have under contract all the guys you signed this year. And that's the key to Kwesi's free agency strategy, is that everything he did this year affects next year. Just about, right? There's a couple of 1-year deals of like depth guys. But it's not like the 2021 offseason. Remember that when Rick Spielman got 1 million 1-year deals? And that had a lot to do with COVID and cap crunches and stuff. But everything is 2 or 3 year deals or longer, like with Will Fries. So really crucially, the Vikings remain flexible, and they get an influx of a whole bunch of mid-round draft capital next year because of all the comp pick bull crap they're doing this year. They will be, I think, in a really good spot with resources. It's just not going to say it on the website until they hit the button that they plan to hit. There's just a proper date to hit it on. So when you look at the website in December and go, oh my God, the cap is screwed for next year, remember that it is not. They just have to pull a couple of levers that they're waiting for the appropriate date to pull. That is the situation. Like, that is literally it. It's going to be a big, scary number until one day it just like isn't, because they clicked a button that nobody can stop them from clicking and that isn't very costly at all, because they don't need to pull the lever very hard because they don't have a lot of needs in 2026. At least they're not projected to. Right now, the season can go any number of ways. Guys can get hurt. Guys can get, have falling outs, right? You can trade somebody at the deadline and suddenly generate more needs for yourself, or guys can underperform and you want to replace them. Long way to go there. And there's no real way to predict that. But the Vikings have as much flexibility as they want. And if you think of flexibility as a currency as much as money itself is, the Vikings are flush with flexibility. They can move any amount of that money that they want. Or none of it, if they don't want. They got to do enough to get under, but that's like tiny. So like they are like set up to contend for 3 years. Just so long as JJ McCarthy is, let's say, a little better than Nick Mullins, this team is set up to contend for 3 years. So please take your third worst team in the NFC betting odds and shove them where the sun don't shine. Town Hall Tuesday is tomorrow. Get your questions in. Link is in the show notes where all those other articles and stuff that I forgot to link are now there, assuming somebody has yelled at me about them. I will see you all tomorrow. And as always, Skull.